Welcome back to Boring Science for Sleep. If this video helps you unwind, leave a comment and consider liking and subscribing. Tonight, we're stepping into the quiet working life of switchboard operators, back when calls moved by hand. It is early, before the town is fully awake, and you hang your coat beside a familiar cordboard. The room is softly lit, with a clock ticking and small lamps waiting to signal a caller. You settle the headset over one ear, test the speaking key, and rest your fingers near the paired chords. A light blinks, you answer, and your voice stays even as you ask for the number. Plug, ring, announce, connect, then listen for the slight click that says the circuit is holding. As the morning builds, trunk lines begin to fill, and every occupied chord reduces the space you have to work. What do you do, step by step, when one line keeps blinking and a busy trunk refuses to release? You don't do anything big at first. You do what you always do, and you let the routine carry you. You glance at the wall clock, then at the small ledger by your elbow, and you breathe out slowly through your nose. In 1956, in a town this size, the exchange runs on habits as much as wires. You answer the next lamp, give the same calm greeting, and listen for the number spoken softly into your ear. But that one light, the stubborn one, flickers again before you've even seated the plug fully in the next jack. It's a private line, not a party line, and it should behave. It keeps calling for you, as if the line itself has something to say. You make a small decision, quiet and practical, the kind nobody notices. You're going to clear the waiting calls in order, but you're going to test that blinking jack the moment you have a breath. You take the next queued call, connect it cleanly, and free the cord pair as soon as you hear the click of release. Then you slide your hand to the blinking position, and your fingers pause on the plug. The plug is cool, smooth, worn slightly oval from years of use. You insert it, not all the way, just enough to listen. There's no voice yet, only a thin tone, and then a faint scratch, like a distant match being struck. You withdraw the plug, wait a beat, and the light still stares back at you. So you try again, fully this time, and press the speaking key. Your own voice sounds steady in your ear as you say the exchange greeting. A person answers, but their words are broken, clipped, like someone speaking from the bottom of a stairwell. You ask them to repeat the number, and you hear a sigh on their end. Then the line drops. The lamp stays lit anyway. That's the first sign the day won't be perfectly smooth. You mark the position in your mind, not with worry, just with attention. Then another lamp, a different one, I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with that request. One on the other side of the board answers for you with a clean, obedient blink. You turn your head just enough to see it in the corner of your eye. You reach for the answering cord. The one you've used so many times, the cloth braid feels familiar. You plug in, press the speaking key, and let your voice stay level. Number, please. A woman gives you a line in town. A simple request, the kind that doesn't need thinking. You repeat it back, just once, the way you were trained, so the ear hears what the mouth intends. Then you take the other plug, seat it in the cold line's jack, and touch the ringing key. The board gives you its tiny response, a soft mechanical certainty. You listen for the answer, for the faint change that tells you a receiver has lifted. When it comes, you announce the caller in the calm, polite phrase the town expects. Then you connect them fully, and you wait for the little click that says the circuit is now holding without you. When you release the key, your fingers don't hurry. They just go back to rest, ready for the next lamp. There's a steady comfort in how the motions repeat. Plug, ring, announce, connect, release. Even the cord has its own weight, a gentle pull toward the board, as if it prefers to hang in a neat curve. The exchange room smells faintly of warm varnish and old paper. Somewhere behind you, there's the quiet breath of equipment, relays resting until they're needed. The clock keeps a patient rhythm, not loud, but always present. You look down at the small ledger again, not to read it, just to steady your sense of order. In a town like this, order is a kind of kindness. You take another call, then another. A doctor's office asking for the pharmacy. A mother calling the school to say a child will be late. The depot wanting the feed store to confirm a delivery. Each time you hear the town wake up through the wire, and each time you connect it, you feel the little satisfaction of making two distant rooms share a moment. Your headset warns against your ear, and the metal band feels less cold now. The mouthpiece sits close, catching your words, not needing you to speak up. You learn early that a steady voice travels better than a loud one. The callers are half asleep at first. Their numbers come slow, with pauses while they think. You don't rush them, you just wait, and the board waits with you. But the stubborn lamp, that private line, keeps its place in your peripheral vision. It doesn't blink like a normal call. It's too steady, as if something is holding it up from underneath. And every so often it flickers, like the circuit is trying to make up its mind. You let it be for the moment. Because the first rule in this room is simple. You handle what's in front of you, and you don't borrow trouble from later. Still, you make a tiny note in your mind. Not a worry, just a mark on the map. When the queue thins enough to give you a breath, you'll look at it properly. For now, you keep clearing the night's leftovers. A long call that couldn't be finished after midnight. A wrong number that rang half the town before someone admitted they'd misread the card. A line that was busy, then free, then busy again, like a door that keeps opening and closing. You plug, you ring, you announce. And when it's done, you pull the plugs with a gentle twist so the jacks don't wear too fast. The equipment lasts longer when it's treated like something that deserves to last. There's a small cloth near your elbow for wiping your fingertips. The plugs pick up a little film over a shift from hands and dust and time. If you keep them clean, they seat better. And if they seat better, you get fewer half connections, fewer callers saying, "Operator, are you there?" The supervisor used to say that most trouble begins as something very small. A speck of dirt, a cord not fully in, a caller lifting and setting down the receiver too quickly. Your job is to notice small things before they become bigger ones. The room itself has its own small sounds. A faint tick as a lamp changes state, the soft thud of a plug seating, the whisper of cord fabric brushing the wood edge of the board. When you've done this long enough, you can almost tell what kind of call it is by the rhythm of the lights. Short flashes, quick connects, that's people checking on a ride. Long holds, steady lamps, that's the doctor, or the mill office, or someone waiting for long distance. You can feel the town's schedule through your hands. And as dawn settles into a pale morning, that schedule begins to press harder. Shh. The first real wave arrives without fanfare. It always does. One lamp, then another, then a small cluster, like fireflies gathering. Your hands start moving with less pause between steps. You don't speed up your voice, but your fingers become more economical. You stop looking directly at each jack label, because you already know where most of them are. Your hand goes to the place before your eyes do. You answer a call from the grocery. They want the bakery. You connect them, hear the answer, announce, and release. Before you've fully settled the cord back on its rest, another lamp is ready. This one is a home line, asking for the hardware store. Then the hardware store calling the mill. The town is building its morning one connection at a time. You notice the trunk indicators more now. The long-distance trunks sit like a separate little world on the board. Different lamps, different discipline. They're the lines that reach beyond town, beyond the places you can picture. Most mornings, they're quiet early. A few business calls. An occasional family message to someone in the city. But today, you see more activity than you'd expect for this hour. One trunk lamp lights, and before it's even cleared, another shows demand. That means the town is reaching outward. Something is pulling at the edges. You don't know what it is yet. You only feel it as pressure, the way you feel weather before it arrives. A caller asks, "Long distance, please." You use the same phrase you always use, gentle and practiced. You tell them to wait a moment. You plug into the trunk circuit, Request the long-distance operator and hold the cord steady while the distant exchange responds. There's a faint tone, then the far operator's voice, clipped and clear, as if spoken from a room of polished metal. You pass the details along. You don't add anything. You just relay names, numbers, a destination town. Then you wait, cord held in place, while the larger system does its searching. These calls remind you that your board is only one small section of a much wider net. Miles of wire, poles standing in fields, cables buried under streets, repeater stations humming quietly in locked rooms, all of it so that one voice can arrive in another ear. While you wait on that long-distance request, the local board doesn't stop. A lamp lights, then another. You can't answer them yet because your hands are occupied, so you keep your voice soft in the headset, and you keep your posture steady. The callers will hold, the lamps will keep their patient insistence. When the long-distance operator returns, you complete the handoff and you free that cord pair again. Then, immediately, you pivot back to the locals. Your hand goes to the first waiting lamp, you answer, you connect, you release, and you do it again. You begin to choose shorter wording, not because you're rushed, but because you're conserving little pieces of time. Number, please. Just a moment. Thank you. You still sound polite. You still sound like yourself, but you trim the edges. A switchboard operator learns that you can save seconds without stealing comfort. It's in the tone more than the length. A calm tone can make a short phrase feel generous. The board warms under your hands. Not hot, just warmer than the room. The lamps give off a tiny heat. The circuits carry their own invisible work. You can feel it in the way the air seems slightly drier near the equipment. You shift in your chair, quietly so the cord of your headset doesn't snag. The chair creaks once, then settles. You keep your shoulders loose. Tension travels into your fingers, and tense fingers make clumsy plugs. Clumsy plugs make mistakes. Mistakes make callers anxious. So you stay loose, and the town stays smoother. A man from the newspaper office asks for long distance. Then another long distance request comes in from a home line. Then a third. That's when it feels unusual. Not alarming, just out of pattern. You glance at the trunk indicators again. They're filling early. A trunk line, once occupied, stays tied up until the call ends. You can't reclaim it by will. You can only wait. And when more people want long distance than there are trunks, you get a quiet bottleneck. It's like a single-lane bridge, except nobody can see it. You handle it the usual way. You take the requests in order. You tell people gently that there may be a short wait. You write a note on a message pad, the kind with thin paper and a blunt pencil that never quite sharpens. Name, number, destination, time. You keep the notes tidy, because messy notes are a different kind of trouble. You set the pad where you can see it without turning your head too far. Every movement matters when the lamps come fast. And through all this, that private line lamp still holds its strange insistence. It isn't part of the rush. It isn't asking politely and then resting. It stays lit as if someone has forgotten to hang up, or as if the line itself is stuck between states. You've seen a receiver left off the hook before. Usually the lamp is steady, and when you listen in, you hear room noise, or a child talking, or nothing at all. This one is different. It has that faint scratch, that match strike sound, and then the broken voice that disappears. And the lamp doesn't obey the drop. A normal circuit should release when the caller hangs up. This one holds. You wait until you've cleared a small wave of calls. There's a brief easing, a few seconds where no new lamp lights. The kind of pause that feels like the room taking a breath. You use it. You reach for the stubborn position again, not hurried, not annoyed, just methodical. You plug in with the listening tip, the way you did before. You press the key and you listen. This time there's no voice at all, just a thin hum, faint but steady. It sounds like a distant transformer or wind against a wire. You shift the plug slightly, a tiny turn. The hum changes just a little. That tells you something, not what exactly, but that there's a physical part to it, contact and metal and alignment. You withdraw the plug. The lamp stays lit. You write a small mark on a scrap, the position number, and the time. Not a full trouble ticket yet, just a note to yourself. The next lamp comes on right away, as if the board doesn't want you thinking too long. You answer it. It's the dairy, calling the cafe. You connect them. The cafe answers on the second ring. You announce and release. The cords hang neatly again. Another call comes in, a home line asking for the church office. You connect it. Another lamp, another voice. The town is fully awake now. By the time the wall clock moves deeper into the morning, your message pad has a small list of long-distance requests. You clear them as trunks become available. Each time a trunk releases, you feel a tiny easing in your chest. Not relief exactly, just the satisfaction of regained capacity. When a trunk is free, the board feels like it has room to breathe. When they're all busy, the room feels smaller. It's strange how invisible things can change the feeling of space. A long-distance operator calls in on a trunk, not a request from your town, but a routing through. You recognize the pattern. The lamp and the tone are slightly different. It means someone out there is trying to reach someone in here. You answer with the proper phrase for interoperated traffic. The distant operator gives you a local number and asks you to ring through. You repeat it back. Careful. Mishearing a number is an old, common mistake, and nobody likes it. You seat the plug into the local jack, ring, and wait. It's busy. You report it back. The distant operator asks you to try again in a moment. So you do. You mark it mentally as a pending item, like a plate kept warm. All of this is still within the normal shape of a morning. Busy, yes, but manageable. Your hands know what to do, your voice stays even, and the board, despite its little complaints, is mostly cooperative. Mostly because every time you glance toward that stubborn private line lamp, it's still there, still lit, still refusing to behave like the others. A call comes in from the repair desk. Not a technician yet, but the clerk who takes reports. She asks lightly if you've noticed any trouble on a certain circuit. Her tone is casual, but you hear the reason underneath. They're gathering small signs. You tell her you have one position that's been holding its lamp oddly. You give the number, you describe the faint hum and the broken voice. She says she'll note it and pass it on. No promises. Just a place in the queue. You thank her and you return to your calls. When you work aboard, you learn what can be solved from your chair and what cannot. You can reseat a plug. You can test a line for tone. You can move a call to another circuit if you have one. But you can't climb a pole. You can't open a cable head. You can't tighten a screw in a relay rack. Your power is small, but it's exact. It's the power of making order from signals. The morning continues, and the rush begins to take its familiar shape. Doctors' offices call for labs, the mill office calls suppliers. The grocery calls homes with deliveries. You start to recognize voices, not by name always, but by cadence. A certain man always clears his throat before he speaks. A certain woman always says dear to you, as if you're sitting beside her kitchen table. You don't correct them, you just do the work. You let the town be itself. And still, more long distance than usual. Not constant, but enough to notice. Enough to keep the trunks busy longer. Enough that when a trunk releases, another request is ready to take it. You begin to watch the trunk lamps the way a farmer watches clouds. Not with fear, with practical attention. Because if they stay full, you'll need to pace your promises. You'll need to tell people to wait and mean it. As the rush gradually smooths out, you feel the board shift into a steadier rhythm. Less like a wave, more like a stream. Calls still come, but they come with more space between them. You let your fingers rest for half a second longer between lamps. You glance down at your message pad and you see the neat little stack of names and towns. You don't read them out loud, you just let your eyes confirm they're there. A pencil mark is a promise, and a promise has to be kept in order. A local call comes in from a home on Maple Street. You answer, and a man asks for the barber. You connect it, you ring, you hear the barber's familiar voice, and you announce with the same gentle rhythm. The chord settles into its curve again, and the lamp goes dark. The quiet middle of the morning has a different sound. The lamps still light, but they do it one at a time, like careful taps on a window. In the pauses, you can hear the room itself again, the small relays at rest, the steady clock, the faint breath of the power plant somewhere beyond the wall. You take a call for a neighbor. You take a call for a delivery. You take a call for a teacher asking another teacher if they can cover a class. Each one is small, and each one is somebody's whole moment. And then, without any change in the room, you hear it. A tiny click that doesn't belong to any normal connection. It's in your headset, under the voice of a caller, like a little fingernail on glass. You keep your voice calm anyway. You finish the connection cleanly. You listen for release. The call drops properly, and the chord pair comes free. The next caller says, quietly, "Operator, I can't hear you clear." You don't take it personally. You don't apologize too much either. You just shift into the small set of checks that live in your hands. You ask them to speak again, slowly. You listen for the hum under their words. You move the plug, a small turn, the way you'd seat a key in an old lock. The sound changes, and then it steadies. You say, "How's that now?" They say it's better, but they still sound unsure. You make the connection, and you keep one ear on the line longer than usual, just to be sure it holds. When you release, you don't let the cord swing. You guide it back to its rest, because the board responds well to gentle habits. You look, without moving your head much, toward the position you marked earlier. That private line lamp is still lit. It's not shouting. It's just refusing to go away. And now, with this new little click and hum, it feels less like an oddity and more like a pattern forming. You wait for a natural pause in the calls, then you bring the listening plug to that stubborn jack again. You seat it halfway first, just enough to test, and you press the key. The hum is there right away, thin and steady, like a wire under wind. You listen for voice, nothing. You listen for a change when you turn the plug. There's a soft scratch, and then a sharper click, like a tiny switch being flicked by itself. You pull the plug out, and for a moment the lamp flickers. For a single breath, it looks like it might release. Then it steadies again as if it has decided to stay. You don't fight it. You don't jab the plug back in. You just make a calm decision, the kind the job is made of. You're going to protect your spare circuits. You're going to stop spending your margin on a problem you can't fix from this chair. So you'll tag it properly, in the right order, and let repair take its place in the day. You pull the trouble ticket pad closer. You write the line position, the time, and the symptom. Steady lamp, faint hum, intermittent clicking, voice breaks and drops. You add one more note, that it held after disconnect. You tear the ticket cleanly and set it in the tray where the repair clerk will collect it. The act is small, but it changes how you feel, because now it's no longer just in your peripheral vision. Now it's been given a place in the system. Another lamp lights, and you answer. A shopkeeper asks for the bank. You connect them, and the bank answers with that brisk workday tone. You announce and release, and you let the cords hang straight. The next call is a party line. You can tell right away by the way the request is phrased and the way the caller pauses before giving a name. On a party line, you don't just ring a number. You ring a household, and you do it with a pattern, long and short, like a small code. You ask who they want. They give you a family name. You glance at the directory card for that line and confirm the ring pattern. 2 long and 1 short. You ring it exactly that way, and you wait. Somewhere out there, in a kitchen or a hallway, a bell is answering your hand. Someone lifts a receiver, and you hear the soft change in the line. You announce, and you connect. Party lines teach you patience. They teach you to speak without sounding like you're listening too closely, because you can't control who else might have a receiver lifted. You can only do your part and keep your tone clean. A few minutes later, another caller mentions the same thing as before. Operator, there's a funny sound on here. Not angry, just matter of fact, like someone noticing a draft under a door. You ask, is it a hum, dear, or a click? You don't usually say dear, but sometimes it slips into the voice anyway, not as a performance, just as a way to soften the question. They say it's both. They say it comes and goes. You reach for a spare circuit and you make the quick shift. You move them off the suspect path and onto a cleaner one of the quiet margins you keep for days like this. The sound clears and they can hear again. But you feel the cost of that decision right away. One more spare now belongs to a temporary fix, and you have fewer places to go if the trouble spreads. You make another note. Not a full ticket this time, just a pencil line in your ledger. You mark which spare you used and for which call. This is how the job stays calm, by remembering things before you need to remember them. The exchange room has no windows you can open, but you can still sense the outside. The light in the hallway changes, the air warms by a degree, the town shifts from morning errands toward late morning work. Your stomach notices the time before your eyes do. You think briefly of the lunch pail in your coat pocket, maybe a sandwich wrapped in wax paper, maybe a hard-boiled egg with salt in a folded napkin, but the board doesn't care what time it is. It only cares what lights. Another long-distance request comes in. You glance at the trunk lamps, and you see they're still unusually busy. Not jammed, not yet, but used. Like every trunk is being asked to do a little more than its normal share. You take the request, you write it down, you tell the caller, gently, that there may be a wait. They accept it, the way people do when they can hear you're competent, and you add the slip to the stack. A few calls later, you hear something else, a faint echo. It's subtle, just a doubling of a syllable, like a word bouncing off a far wall. It's the sort of thing most callers can't name. They just say it sounds strange, but you can hear it, because your ear has been trained by hours and years of small sounds. Echo can mean distance. It can mean a bad connection. It can mean a circuit that's been patched too many times, or a cable pair that's not sitting cleanly. It can also mean someone, somewhere, is working on lines. A technician testing, clipping on, clipping off. But you don't guess too hard. You just keep notes and keep order. A call comes in from the mill office. They want a supplier 2 towns over. That's long distance. And you recognize the clerk's voice, firm and polite, a man who keeps accounts. You take the details and you reach for a trunk. The first trunk you try is busy. You try the next. Busy again. On the third, you get through and you request the distant operator. You pass the town name, you pass the number, you repeat it back, careful, because numbers are slippery when spoken. Then you wait. The mill clerk stays on the line. You can hear the faint scrape of paper on his end, as if he's already working while he waits. You don't mind? Waiting is part of the system, and your job is to make waiting feel ordinary. The long-distance operator comes back. She gives you a quiet confirmation, and then there's a pause while she rings out. You hear the distant ringing tone, and then the click of answer. You connect the mill clerk through, and you release the cord. The trunk stays held, of course. That's how it works. One long-distance conversation can occupy a trunk for minutes at a time, sometimes longer, and each minute is a piece of your flexibility. You look at the board again, not with worry, just with a practical inventory. Local positions are fine. A few cords are in use. A few lamps are dark and ready. The spare you used earlier is still tied up. The noisy circuit is still noisy. The stubborn private line is still lit. And the trunks are still busy. It's not a crisis. It's just a day where you have to keep your hands a little closer to the rules. Because rules create calm when conditions get tight. You take another call, and it's from a doctor's office. They ask for the hospital in the county seat, long distance again. You write it down, and you tell them you'll place it as soon as a trunk is free. They accept that, but you hear the weight in their silence. Doctors' calls are often ordinary, but you never treat them as casual. You watch for a trunk to release. When it does, you move fast, but not sharp. You take the first waiting long-distance request, the doctor's office, because some calls go ahead by habit, not by written policy, but by human sense. You reach out, you plug, you request the operator, and you pass the destination. While that long distance is being set, the local lamps begin to gather again. Not a full rush, but a little cluster. People noticing it's near noon, calling to arrange lunch, calling to check if a part is in, calling to say, I'm on my way. You have only two hands. So you let the long distance sit with the far operator for a moment, and you clear the local lamps in front of you, one by one, keeping the board from stacking up too high. The far operator will come back when she's ready. That's the rhythm between exchanges, a kind of polite patience between professionals. When she returns, you complete the connection. Another trunk is now occupied, another slice of capacity is gone until the call releases. You can feel the board's balance changing. On an easy day, you have room to correct small mistakes. On a tight day, every correction uses something up, a spare circuit, a free trunk, a little bit of time. The repair clerk appears briefly at the doorway, not coming in, just leaning in to collect tickets. She moves quietly, like someone entering a church. You hand her your trouble slip for the stubborn private line, and you add, softly, that you've had 2 complaints about Hume on a different circuit. She nods, and she takes the paper, and she's gone again. The room returns to being just you and the board, and the steady work. By late morning, you get the kind of call that tests your ability to be neutral. A woman asks for a number, then hesitates. She says a name, then changes it. She asks if you can tell her whether a certain line has been busy all morning. You keep your voice kind, and you keep it plain. You say you can place a call for her. You don't offer more than that. The switchboard is not just wires, it's privacy, held by habit. People will try to pull you into their curiosity because you are close to the town's hidden corners. But you stay where you're supposed to stay. You connect calls, you don't interpret them, you place her call. It rings. No answer. You tell her that gently. She thanks you a little too quickly and hangs up. The lamp goes dark. The board doesn't keep secrets on purpose. It keeps them by doing only its job. You glance again at the stubborn lamp. It's still there, not louder, not softer, just present, like a single note held too long. Then, as if the day wants to underline its point, the hum returns more strongly on another call. This time it's obvious. The caller says, "Operator, there's a buzzing. I can hardly hear." You listen in just a moment, and you hear it too. A low hum, with a thin edge to it. Not just background, not just distance. Something in the line. You make a decision quickly. You shift them to the spare again, but you hesitate before you do it, because you know you don't have many. Still, a caller who can't hear is a call that can't be completed, and your job is completion. So you move them. The hum fades. Their voice becomes clear. You connect them through. Now 2 of your margins are in use. Not permanently, but for now. And you can feel how the board becomes less forgiving. The lamps don't change. The room doesn't change. But your options do. You write another short note. Which spare, which time, which complaint. Your pencil moves steadily. It makes the same soft sound each time. Graphite on paper, a quiet record of invisible trouble. A bell in town rings for noon, faint through the building's walls. Or maybe it's just your sense of noon, trained by years of watching the clock. Either way, the calls change again. Lunch hour has its own character. People are home for a moment, then back to work. They call fast. They hang up fast. They say what they need, and they go. You take a call for the diner. Then the diner calls the butcher. Then the butcher calls a farm outside town. Short, quick connections. The cords barely have time to warm in your hand before you're releasing them. You are careful not to let the pace creep into your voice. Speed in the hands is fine. Speed in the voice can feel like impatience, and impatience, even imagined, makes callers stumble. So you stay steady. In the early afternoon, there's usually a lull. The town returns to work. The children are in school. The offices are busy in person, not by phone. That's when you can sometimes eat half a sandwich, one small bite at a time, between lamps. That's when you can tidy the cords, straighten your message pad, and catch up on any little notes. But today, the day doesn't open that space for you. Not fully, because the trunk lines are still busy, because two spare circuits are tied up by your own careful workarounds, because the stubborn private line still won't release. It means your early afternoon is going to be a different kind of steady, not quiet steady, tight steady, the kind where you don't let anything pile up because there's nowhere to put it. A long-distance operator calls in again, routing through. You answer with the inter-operator phrase. Her voice is professional, slightly distant, as if she's standing in a bigger room with more boards than yours. She gives you a local number to ring. You repeat it back, you seat the plug, and you try. Busy again. You can't help a small internal sigh, but you don't let it touch your tone. You tell her it's busy. She asks you to hold and try again. So you hold the trunk, and that means, for as long as you're holding, that trunk is not available to your own callers. This is one of those quiet pressures that only operators feel. A trunk held for a retry is not doing nothing. It's doing exactly what it's told. But it narrows your world. You decide to be efficient. While that trunk is held, you clear locals with your other hand, using the board like a practiced pianist, one side working, the other side waiting. You answer, you connect, you release. You keep the held chord stable. After a brief interval, you ring the busy number again. This time, it's still busy. You report it, the far operator thanks you, and she releases the trunk. You feel the slight easing as the lamp goes dark. The board gives you that little piece of space back. Then a call comes in that's simple but revealing. A teenage boy asks for long distance to a city, and he asks it with a kind of excitement he's trying to hide. You take the details, you write them down. You tell him there will be a wait. He says that's fine, he'll hold. Another long-distance request comes in behind it. Then another. You look at your pad, and you see the list growing again. It's not endless, but it's steady, and it's unusual for early afternoon. You begin to suspect there's a reason, not a dramatic reason, not a disaster. Just a human reason, like a big order at the mill, or a meeting, or a piece of news in the paper that's sending people outward, asking questions, confirming details. In small towns, patterns ripple. Phones are part of the ripple. You keep taking calls, you keep writing them down, you keep placing them when trunks free up. And each time you occupy a trunk, you can feel the board's shape tighten again. A local call comes in, and the caller says, "Operator, I think you skipped me." His tone is not angry yet. It's the tone of someone who feels overlooked. You know that tone. It comes when people have been waiting, watching time, imagining the order of things. You don't defend yourself. You don't explain the whole system. You just use a short, reassuring phrase. You say you're sorry for the wait, and you ask for the number again. You repeat it back to show you've got it. You place the call immediately. The call goes through. You hear the caller's breath soften a little, the way people do when they realize the system is still steady. And you let your fingers return to their resting place, light on the cord pairs, ready for the next lamp. There's a particular quiet satisfaction in that moment, when a small friction in the day is smoothed out by simple order. The board doesn't praise you for it, it just keeps blinking. A lamp on the lower row comes up again, and you answer without shifting your posture. "Number, please." A woman asks for the drugstore, and her voice is ordinary, like she's stirring something on the stove. You repeat the number back, then plug, ring, and listen for the receiver to lift. When the druggist answers, you announce the caller and connect them through. The cord hangs in its familiar curve, and you guide it with 2 fingers so it doesn't tangle with the next pair. Small towns don't have many operators on a shift, so you learn early to keep your cords neat, because neat cords are time you don't have to spend later. A small cluster of lamps lights at once, not a flood, just enough to ask for your attention. You answer the first, take the number, and place the call, then the second, then the third. A man wants the feed store, and he says the words quickly, like he's already behind schedule. You keep him from rushing himself into a wrong number by repeating it back slowly and clearly. He corrects 1 digit, grateful without saying so. You make the connection, and you release. The queue thins again, and in that thin space you feel the earlier decisions sitting on the board like weights you can't move. 2 spare circuits are still spoken for, not by policy, but by necessity. And the long-distance trunks keep spending their minutes, 1 call at a time. You glance, just once, toward the stubborn private line lamp. It's still there, steady as a small star that refuses to set. You don't touch it. Not now. You've already done the responsible thing, you've written the ticket, and you've put it into the system's hands. There's a calm in that, a kind of acceptance that keeps your shoulders loose. Still, you can't help listening for the sound of trouble spreading, the way you listen for a change in the hum of a refrigerator at home. And a few calls later you hear it again. That faint little click under a voice, as if a relay is tapping when it shouldn't. The caller doesn't mention it this time. They might not notice, or they might be too polite. But you notice. You finish their connection quickly and cleanly, and you keep the note in your head without letting it become a worry. A methodical mind doesn't panic. It catalogues. In manual telephony, the catalog is half the craft. You know which circuits are usually quiet. You know which cords are a little stiff in winter. You know which jacks need a firmer seat because the wood around them has worn a fraction of an inch. And you know, without anyone telling you, that today's patterns are leaning away from easy. A lamp on the trunk side lights again, and you answer with the inter-operator phrase. The long-distance operator's voice arrives, bright and controlled, like it's coming through a clean hallway. She gives you a name and a local number, and she wants it ringed right away. You repeat the number back, then you look to your directory card. Your eyes move over the small type, the way they always do, left to right, line by line. And there's the first small snag that isn't a fault, just a complication. The number she's given belongs to a party line. Party lines aren't rare here. Not in 1956, not in a town that grew faster than the wire crews could string new pairs. A party line is a practical thing. Shared copper, shared ringing, shared patience. And it means a number alone isn't always enough. You need the household name, the ring pattern, the little human code that makes a shared line feel private. The operator on the trunk doesn't always have those details. Her world is routing and timing and toll tickets. Your world is knowing who answers 2 longs and a short, and who answers a single long, and who gets 3 shorts that sound like a quick knock. You say gently that the line is a party line, and you ask for the listing. There's a brief pause on the trunk, paper shuffling on her end. Then she gives you a name, but it doesn't match what your card shows. Not exactly. It's close, like a cousin's name or a married name from a few years back, or a business name someone uses in the city directory. In a bigger exchange, you might have a tight cross-reference for that. Here, you have your card, your memory, and the quiet understanding that people's names and numbers don't always stay tidy. You don't correct the long-distance operator sharply. You just slow down enough to keep the mistake from becoming real. You ask her to repeat the name once more, and you repeat it back, careful with each syllable. Then you check the card again, and you find the nearest match. Same road, same party line group, but a slightly different surname. It could be a simple misread on her end. Or it could be that the call is meant for a person who lives there but isn't the billing name. On a party line, those details matter. because ringing the wrong pattern rings the whole shared line, and it announces itself in every house at once. You make a quiet decision that protects everyone's afternoon. You'll verify without making it a scene. You'll ring the party line in the least disruptive way you can, and you'll ask softly for the person by name once someone answers. That's the art of it, doing the necessary thing while disturbing as little as possible. You seat the plug into the party line jack. The jack face is smooth from years of fingers, and the label is slightly faded but still readable. You touch the ringing key, and you send the pattern that corresponds to the closest listing on your card. 2 long and 1 short. You count it with your fingers as you do it, not because you can't remember, but because counting keeps the rhythm exact. Somewhere out in town, bells ring in a few kitchens and hallways. You wait. The line clicks as a receiver lifts. A woman answers, cautious, because party line answering is always a little cautious. You speak with a practiced neutrality, and you ask if the person the long-distance operator named is there. There's a pause, and you hear the faint, muffled sound of the receiver being covered by a hand. Then the woman says, "No, that name doesn't live here," but she adds quietly that the family next door on the same line might be who you want. This is the other side of party lines, the shared inconvenience turning, sometimes, into shared knowledge. You thank her, and you let your tone stay warm. You withdraw the plug just enough to stop the circuit, then you reseat it firmly and ring again, this time with the other household's pattern. 1 long, 2 short. You wait again, and another receiver lifts. A man answers, voice deeper, and you ask for the name again. This time he says, yes, and you hear him step away from the phone, calling into the house. You don't listen for the words. You listen for the practical signs, the shift of air, the change in distance, the second set of footsteps. When the person comes to the receiver, you announce, simply, long distance calling. Then you complete the patch. You connect the trunk cord to the local line cord, and you feel the circuit settle into place. There's a tiny change in the tone, a steadier hum, like a door closing with a soft latch. And now, the trunk is no longer just asking. It's occupied. It's held by voices that may take their time. This is the kind of moment that feels small but has consequence across the rest of your shift. Because a trunk tied up is a trunk that can't carry the next request, and you already know you've been running with fewer margins than usual. You log the connection the way you're trained, with a brief note of time and destination details for toll accounting. Even in a small exchange, the paperwork matters because the phone company's memory is written by operators in pencil. You keep your handwriting plain and readable, because another clerk might have to interpret it later. A neat log is another kind of kindness. The lamps on the local side begin to gather again, as if the town senses that something has been tied up. It's not that callers know about trunks. They only know that waiting happens. They lift a receiver, they turn a dial if they have one, or they wait for you if they don't, and they trust the system will respond. Your job is to keep that trust intact even when the system is tight. You answer the next lamp. A man asks for the garage, and his tone says he wants it quickly, but he's trying to be polite about it. You connect him, the garage answers on the first ring, and you release. Another lamp. A woman wants the dress shop, and you connect it. Another lamp. Someone wants long distance, and you feel the small pressure of that request land in your chest, because you glance at the trunk indicators, and you see that the trunk you just patched is still held. Held, and likely to remain held. You tell the caller you'll place it as soon as a circuit is available. You write it down, you add it to the message pad. And the pad, for the first time today, looks like it might start to become a stack instead of a list. That's the difference between a manageable day and a compressed one. The work isn't harder, exactly. There's just less room for the work to spread out. A call comes in marked urgent, the kind you can tell by the tone before the words say it. A mother wants the doctor, and her voice is tight, trying not to break. You don't ask extra questions, you don't need details. You treat it as priority because that's what the job has always done. Quietly, Without announcing it, you connect to the doctor's office line. It's busy. You try again, and it's still busy. You feel the day's constraint press a little harder, because a busy line isn't something you can fix either. But you can route. You check the directory for the doctor's home line, then you ring it with the careful pattern that won't disturb more than necessary. A receiver lifts, and you hear the doctor himself, slightly out of breath, as if he's been moving. You announce the caller and connect them through. You don't stay on the line. You don't listen. You simply make sure the circuit holds, then you release. That's one of the quiet truths of the job. Sometimes you are the bridge for ordinary errands, and sometimes you are the bridge for the most important moment in someone's day. And you do it with the same steady hands. A few minutes later, another urgent request comes, back to back, as if the afternoon has decided to test your pacing. This time it's the depot, asking for the mill office, and the voice is brisk, businesslike, but insistent. You connect them quickly, and you keep the announcement short. Your words are efficient, but your tone stays calm. Calm is contagious, and you've learned to spread it without making a show of it. Now, when you look back at the lamps, you see a small queue has formed again. Not a wall of light, just a row of steady signals waiting their turn. And in that row, one lamp flickers in a familiar way. The stubborn private line, still lit, still not releasing, still asking for attention it shouldn't need. You can't fix it from here, but you can keep it from stealing more of your time than it deserves. So, you don't touch it. You treat it like a broken window latch in an old building. Not dangerous, just noted. And you keep doing your rounds. A subscriber calls and says, again, that they've been waiting. Not accusing, but close. You answer with the same brief reassurance, and you place their call next. You keep the order as fair as you can, and when you bend it for urgency, you do it quietly. The board feels like a small machine for distributing patience. You can't create more trunks. You can't create more spare circuits. But you can distribute your calm, and it keeps the whole place from feeling sharp. By mid-afternoon, you finally hear the sound you've been waiting for, the soft release click from the long-distance patch you made earlier. The trunk lamp darkens, and for a moment, the board feels like it has exhaled. You don't linger in that relief. You use the freed trunk right away, because you have names on the pad waiting for their turn. You take the next long-distance request, plug in, and ask for the distant operator. You pass the destination town, the number, and the name if needed. Then you wait, headset warm, hand steady on the cord, while the larger network reaches out beyond your exchange again. In the 1950s, long distance still has a texture to it. It's not just dialing and hearing a ring, it's operators and trunks and routing, and sometimes a faint delay as the call is built piece by piece across counties and state lines. When it goes well, it feels like magic. When it goes slowly, it feels like a train schedule. The far operator comes back with a confirmation, and you complete the connection. You log it, and the trunk is occupied again, another slice of flexibility gone, but at least it's serving the waiting list. A lamp lights on a line you shifted earlier to avoid hum, and when you listen in briefly, you hear the sound has crept back. Not as strong, but present, like a draft returning through a gap you thought you'd covered. You make another small decision. Instead of using yet another spare, you test whether the original circuit has cleared. You switch them back gently, listening for the hum. It's still there. So you put them back on the cleaner path again, accepting that the spare will stay tied up until repair can address the fault. This is how constraints become part of your routine, not by announcement, but by accumulation. You add another note in your ledger with time and circuit so the repair desk has evidence, not just complaints. Evidence matters because the repair crew has its own queue, its own geography, its own practical limits. They can't chase every faint hum without a map, and your notes are part of the map. A technician's voice appears briefly on the line to the exchange, calling from the repair room. He asks you which position has the steady lamp that won't release. You tell him the position number, and you keep your voice as even as your handwriting. He says he'll come take a look at the frame, and you can hear him already thinking in wire pairs and terminals. You thank him, not too warmly, just the professional thanks of one part of a system to another. When the line clicks off, you feel the room settle back into its own small sounds. A lamp rises again, and you answer it without shifting in your chair. Number, please. A man asks for the machine shop, and you can hear metal in the background, a steady clink like tools being set down. You repeat the number back, then plug and ring, and listen for the lift. When the shop answers, you announce and connect, and your fingers guide the cords into a neat loop. Even with the day tightened, you keep the cords tidy, because tidy is how you buy yourself time. Another lamp, and another, and you can feel the afternoon continuing to press, not sharply, just steadily. You take a request for long distance, and you add it to the pad, and the pencil line is clean and straight. The trunk lamps look a little better now, but not empty. Never empty today, just less crowded than before. You glance, for a single beat, toward the stubborn private line. It's still lit, steady as ever, like it's holding its own breath. You let it be. If you keep touching it, you'll only feed it attention, and attention is a kind of resource too. The next call is a party line request, and the caller speaks softly, as if someone is napping nearby. You ask for the name, not just the number, and you hear the small pause while they decide how to say it. You find the card, confirm the pattern, and ring it with exact timing, long and short in the right order. Somewhere more than one bell rings, and you wait for the right receiver to lift. When it does, you announce, connect, and release, and the lamps stay manageable for a moment. In that moment, you can feel how much of this work is listening. Not listening to words, but listening to the shape of sound, the way a line sits, the way a circuit holds or wavers. A clean line has a kind of silence to it, a quiet that makes voices feel closer than they are. A troubled line has texture, a faint edge, a click that doesn't belong. And today, the lines have texture. You take another call, and the caller says they've been cut off twice already. You don't argue with the history of their morning. You just say you'll try again, and you place the call with a little extra care, seating the plugs firmly. You listen for the answer, you announce, and you wait one extra beat to make sure the connection holds. When you release and the cord hangs, the lamp stays dark, and that feels like a small success. There's a soft knock at the exchange room door. Not loud, just polite, the way people knock when they know quiet matters here. The technician steps in, and you notice his hands first, because you always notice hands. They're clean, but not delicate, with small marks at the fingertips from wire and tools. He carries a canvas tool bag that looks heavier than it needs to be. He doesn't speak right away. He looks at the board, then at your trouble tray, then at the stubborn lamp, as if it's introduced itself without words. You tell him which position it is and what you heard when you listened in. Thin hum, intermittent click, voice breaks, lamp holds after disconnect. He nods, and he moves behind the board toward the main distributing frame, the place where outside lines become neat rows of terminals. In a small exchange, the frame is close enough that you can hear him set his bag down. You can also smell it, a faint scent of canvas and oil and metal. You keep working while he works. That's an unspoken rule here. Nobody stops the town just because a fault is being hunted. A lamp lights, you answer, and a woman asks for the library. You connect it, and the librarian answers in a whisper, because the library always answers in a whisper. You announce and connect, and you release, and your eyes flick once toward the technician's shoulders as he leans in. He clips on a test set. You can tell by the faint metallic tap, and by the way he pauses to listen. A test set is a simple thing. A handset and a dial, and sometimes a meter, meant for listening to a line the way an operator does. It lets him become, for a moment, another caller in the system. He doesn't want your attention, and you don't give it to him. Not fully. But you can't help noticing the rhythm of his work. Clip, listen, shift, Listen again. You take two more calls, and as you do, you hear a faint change in your headset. Not a voice, not a new click, just a slight movement in the background, as if the hum is being touched from the other side. The technician says, quietly, not to you exactly, more to the room, that the line is showing off hook. Off hook means the circuit thinks a receiver is lifted, even when nobody is holding it. That would explain a steady lamp that won't release. It could be a stuck switch hook at the subscriber set. It could be moisture in a cable, bridging just enough to mimic a lift. It could be a fault at the frame, a cross, a contact that won't let go. He asks if you know whose line it is. You glance at the listing and you give him the name and address, careful and factual. He writes it on a small pad and you hear the scratch of his pencil. He says he'll start at the frame, then, if it holds, he'll check the protector and the drop. Protector is the little block where the line comes in, meant to guard against surges, and it has its own smell, like old Bakelite and dust. Drop is the wire run to the house, often twisted and stapled along a joist or a baseboard, ordinary and overlooked until it fails. You nod, and you return to the board, because a lamp is already waiting. Number, please. This one is long distance again, and you write the details down, because a trunk is still occupied, and another is busy. You tell the caller you'll place it as soon as you can, and your voice makes waiting feel like a normal part of time. A few minutes pass, and you begin to notice something else. The hum complaints have eased, just slightly. Not gone, but quieter. Maybe the technician's clipping and testing is moving the fault around, or maybe the day's load on the lines is shifting the way electrical load shifts as offices change their use. You don't say anything. You just keep taking notes when you need to and connecting what can be connected. The technician leans in again, and he says the off-hook condition is present at the frame too. That means it's not just a lamp or a jack at your board. It's on the line itself, somewhere beyond this room. He says he'll have to go out, and he lifts his bag like it's part of him. Before he leaves, he asks you to watch if the lamp changes when he pulls the line at the frame. You say you will. He reaches in, and you see his shoulder shift, and you hear a small click, firmer than the ones in your headset. The stubborn lamp flickers. For one breath, it dims, and you feel a little hopeful, without meaning to. Then it lights again, steady. You tell him it came back. He nods like he expected that, and he says something quiet about a wet splice or a grounded pair. Grounded pair means a line touching earth where it shouldn't, often through water, often through time. He steps toward the door, and you're alone with the board again and the day that keeps asking for order. The afternoon continues, and the calls begin to come in small waves. A wave of errands, then a pause. A wave of business, then a pause. You keep your pace the same through all of it. When a subscriber says they've been waiting, you place them next if you can. And if you can't, you tell them gently why. Not a lecture, just a simple phrase. Just a moment, I'm on a long-distance connection. Sometimes that's all a person needs, a reason that makes the waiting feel fair. A trunk releases, and you place one of the long-distance requests from your pad. You plug into the trunk, you ask the long-distance operator, and you pass the details with careful clarity. Town names can sound alike, numbers can slide in the ear, so you speak them at a steady pace, and you listen for the repeat back. When she repeats it correctly, you feel the small satisfaction of accuracy. Then you connect the subscriber and release, and the trunk stays held again, doing its quiet work. In the brief quiet between calls, your eyes drift to the new equipment staged near the wall. It's been there since evening was mentioned, but now you really look at it. A grey cabinet, clean edges, a small panel with labels, and the look of something that doesn't need hands the way your board does. You've heard talk of more dial service, more automatic switching, fewer manual connections. In some towns, they've already converted entire exchanges, and the operators moved to long-distance centers, or to other work. Here, the change is arriving slowly, like a new season that doesn't announce itself. It just appears one morning as a crate in the hallway. You don't resent it. You just notice it, the way you notice everything that shares this room with you. A lamp lights, and you answer, "Number, please." A young woman asks for a number and then stops, as if she's reconsidering whether she should call at all. You wait. Silence on a line is not always a problem. Sometimes it's just a person gathering themselves. She gives the number softly, and you connect it. And when the other end answers, you announce with the same gentle neutrality. You release, and you let them have their privacy. That's another skill of the job, letting go. You touch hundreds of lives in a day, but you don't hold any of them. You connect, and you release. A call comes in from a store, asking to confirm an order for tomorrow. You connect it, and you can hear paper being moved, the rustle of receipts, the little work sounds of commerce. You hear a laugh on one end, brief and tired, and then you disconnect when they're done. The cords return to rest. The lamps dim. The board waits. The work begins to tilt toward evening without you noticing the exact moment it happens. The quality of voices changes first, less brisk, more gentle. People calling from kitchens, from porches, from living rooms where the radio is on low. You can sometimes hear dishes in the background, a faucet running, a child asking a question. Evening calls often come with small pauses, because people are doing two things at once. And you learn to fit yourself into those pauses. A man calls for a ride, asking a friend to pick him up after work. You connect it, and the friend answers with a familiar drawl, and you announce and release. A woman calls her sister in the next town over, and she asks for long distance with the calm certainty of someone who's done it before. You take the details, and you check the trunks. There's one free, and you place it. This time, the long-distance connection goes through quickly, and you feel the board loosen for a moment. Then another call comes in, and another, and the looseness is gone, replaced by the steady rhythm of work. The technician returns at dusk, not loudly, just stepping in with the smell of outside on him. Cool air, a hint of creosote from poles, and something like damp grass. He says the off-hook line was a telephone set with a sticky switch hook. Somebody's receiver wasn't hanging up cleanly, or the little spring lever wasn't returning all the way. He cleaned it, adjusted it, and the line now releases at the protector. You look at the stubborn lamp. It's still lit. You tell him that, and he pauses, then sets his bag down again with a quieter kind of heaviness. He says then you might have two troubles at once: a subscriber set that was truly off-hook, and a board lamp circuit that's holding. Or the line is still intermittently off-hook, not enough to be obvious, enough to confuse the signal. He asks if he can take the position out of service for a brief test. That's not ideal, but it's better than letting it occupy your attention for hours. You agree. He moves behind the board, and you feel a small tension in your stomach. Not fear, just the awareness that any change in a working system can create ripples. He disconnects something at the back, and the lamp goes dark for the first time all day. The sudden absence feels strange, like a sound stopping. He says to watch now, and he tests. Clip. Listen. He says the lamp circuit itself is fine, and when he reconnects, the lamp stays dark. It's resolved for now, as if the system needed a firm reset, a clean break in the loop. You feel a quiet gratitude that doesn't need words. He reminds you to write a note, that the trouble was cleared after a frame and board test, and he'll log it on his side too. You do, because records are how the system remembers. And then, just like that, the day's most stubborn signal has stopped asking. The board feels more spacious, not because it has more trunks or more spares, but because one constant irritation has been removed. You keep working, and you notice your shoulders have dropped slightly without you telling them to. Evening deepens. The calls are still steady, but they're softer now. A family calling to say they'll be late. A teen calling someone across town, voice lowered, as if the wire can carry secrecy. A shop calling to confirm a delivery for the morning. You connect them all with the same careful hand. In the pauses, you catch sight of the new cabinet again, staged near the wall. And this time the supervisor comes in, not for long, just to check something on a clipboard. She mentions, in a quiet voice, that the company's men will be in next week to begin work on the upgrade. Not a full conversion yet, but a step. More lines move to dial service. Fewer coming through your cord board. She says it like a fact, not like a threat. You nod and you say you understand. This job is full of facts you can't change, only accommodate. When she leaves, the room feels the same, but your mind holds the information like a folded note in a pocket. You take another call. A man asks for a familiar number, but he doesn't have it written down. He gives a name, and you recognize it from the directory, and you supply the number back to him, slowly, digit by digit. Directory assistance is part of the work too, in a small exchange, and you do it without making him feel careless. He thanks you, and his thanks has a loneliness in it, like he's grateful someone answered at all. You connect his call and you listen for the answer. It rings. No answer. You tell him gently and he asks you to try again in a few minutes. You say you will, and you make a small mark on your pad. A few minutes later, you try again. This time, someone answers, and you connect them through, and you feel that small, quiet satisfaction again. Not dramatic, just human. As night comes closer, the lamps begin to slow. Not stop. Just slow, leaving longer spaces of quiet between calls. Those spaces are part of the job too. You use them to straighten the message pad, to check your log entries, to make sure trouble tickets are complete, with times and symptoms and the actions you took. In manual telephony, the log is a kind of shadow exchange, a second board made of paper. It records what the lamps can't. A trunk comes free, and you place one of the last long-distance requests waiting on your pad. The far operator answers, and you exchange the same small phrases, professional and calm. You pass the details. She repeats them back, and you connect the subscriber when she's ready. The call holds. You release. You set your pencil down beside the ledger, and you flex your fingers once, quietly. The wood edge of the board feels smooth where so many hands have rested. A lamp rises on the local side, and you answer as if you've never done anything else. Number, please. A tired voice asks for the boarding house on Elm, and you can hear a radio low in the background. You repeat the number back, then place the calling plug, then the called plug, and touch the ringing key. The ring goes out clean, without that earlier roughness, and you listen for the lift. When it answers, you announce, connect, and let the cord pair do its quiet holding. The town's voices are softer now, and you can tell people are sitting down more than standing. The evening meal has ended in many houses, and the phones are used in small, careful bursts. A boy asks for the movie theater, and you connect it, and you hear laughter spilling from a lobby. A woman asks for a ride tomorrow morning, and you connect her, and she keeps her voice low to not wake anyone. You can almost picture the rooms, not because you're nosy, but because sound carries clues. When a line is quiet, you hear the household behind it. When a line is busy, you hear the business behind it. And when a line is troubled, you hear the hardware behind it, the system's bones. Tonight, the bones are mostly behaving. The hum that crept in earlier is faint enough to ignore the way you ignore wind in a window frame, but you keep the notes anyway because you know how faults return. They come back the way a loose stair tread comes back after a day of feet. A trunk lamp glows, and you answer with the interoperator phrase, your tone steady and plain. The far operator asks you to ring a number in town, and she gives it crisply, digit by digit. You repeat it back, careful, then seat the plug and ring. It answers quickly, and you connect the trunk through, and you make a quick entry in the toll log. You don't look up while you write. Your hand knows the lines on the paper, just like it knows the holes in the board. A small part of this job is learning where your eyes can rest, because if your eyes are always darting, your mind starts to dart too. And darting minds make sloppy work. A pause opens, a real one, long enough that you can hear the clock more clearly. In that pause, you lift your lunch pail from where it's been waiting and you open it with a quiet click. The wax paper is folded tight around a sandwich, and the bread smells faintly of yesterday's kitchen. You take one small bite, then set it down again without chewing too fast. Even eating has to fit the rhythm here. You chew slowly, and you swallow, and you listen for the next lamp to rise. It does, of course. The board always has one more voice in it. Number, please. A man asks for the bank, then adds, as if remembering that he needs the night depository number. You tell him the bank's line first, because you can connect that with your hands, not your memory. You ring, you announce, you connect, and you release. Then you pick up your pencil again and make a small note, because the bank's night depository line is sometimes listed differently. In these older directories, certain services are hidden under headings, not names. And in a small exchange, you're part directory, part clock, part bridge. A few minutes later, that same man calls back, and this time you give him the number slowly. He repeats it, grateful, and you hear him writing it down. When he hangs up, the lamp goes dark the way it should. You glance at the trouble tray, where earlier slips are stacked neatly. The technician cleared the stubborn lamp, and you can feel how the room has been calmer since. It's a quiet lesson you've learned before. One bad signal can change the whole day's feel, not by force, but by constant asking. Now, without that constant asking, the board seems to settle into its proper scale. Not big, not small. Just right for two hands and one steady voice. The supervisor's note about the coming upgrade sits in your mind like a folded piece of paper. You don't open it every minute, but it's there, and you can feel its edges. When more dial service comes in, some of these lamps will stop belonging to you. Some calls will go straight through, without your greeting, without your plugs. It will be quieter in a different way, quieter because there is less for you to do, and that kind of quiet has its own weight. A caller asks for long distance, and for a moment you're grateful for the familiar complexity. You take the details, you check the trunks, and you find one available. You plug into the trunk, request the long-distance operator, and pass the destination with your usual clarity. The far operator repeats it back, and you confirm. Then you wait, cord held in a gentle curve, while the larger network finds its way. Long distance, in this era, is still a stitched thing. A line built from pieces, operator to operator, frame to frame. And you can feel, in the little pauses, how many hands are involved beyond your room. The connection comes back, and you ring the local subscriber, and when they answer, you announce and connect. The trunk lamp stays lit, doing its work, and you release your key. When you look back to your local side, you see only one lamp waiting. That's the kind of balance you like. One waiting, one working, one resting. You answer the waiting lamp, and it's a simple request, a friend calling a friend. You connect it, and the two voices meet, and the board returns to its soft watchfulness. A long pause arrives again, and this time you take another bite of your sandwich. You taste mustard and a little onion, and the plain comfort of food made at home. You swallow, and you wipe your fingers on the small cloth by your elbow. Clean hand seat plugs better. Better seating makes quieter calls. Quieter calls make calmer people. So even this, even wiping your fingertips feels like part of the work. A lamp rises, then another, and you return the pail to the side without closing it fully. You answer, connect, release. Answer, connect, release. Your voice stays even, but you can hear fatigue in some callers now. Not sleepiness exactly, just the worn sound of a day that has been long. Even if nothing dramatic happened. A woman asks for the nursing home, and she says the name slowly, like it matters to say it right. You connect her, and you listen for the answer, and when it comes, you announce gently and connect. You don't know what she will say. You only know that she needed the line to open, and you opened it. That's the kind of service that never shows up in advertisements. It's just there, woven into evenings. The trunk call you placed earlier releases, and the lamp goes dark. You make the small notation time ended, and you set your pencil down again. In a larger office, someone else might do the toll tickets. Here, you do them because the system is small enough to fit inside one shift, and because the company trusts an operator's handwriting. The clock moves forward, and the calls thin again. The town is settling. Businesses have closed. The depot has fewer messages to chase. The mill's office lights are off, and the only calls from there now might be to a night foreman. You still get a few, though. A man from the plant calls for a mechanic, and you can hear machinery humming under his words. You connect him, and you keep the ring short and clean, because he's holding the receiver with a shoulder. He thanks you without ceremony, and you release. Another lamp rises, and it's a party line. You can tell by the way the caller says the name instead of the number, and by the little hesitation. You check the card, confirm the pattern, and ring it carefully. The right receiver lifts, and you announce, and you connect. Party lines at night have a different etiquette. People answer more softly. They hang up more carefully, so the click won't sound like a slap. And you follow that same softness with your own hands. A small scratch appears in your headset for a moment, a familiar old texture. It's not strong enough to ruin a call, but you notice it anyway. You glance at the cord you're using and you shift it slightly, letting it hang without twisting. Sometimes noise is the line. Sometimes it's the cord itself, the braid worn inside, copper tired from years of bending. When the call ends, you guide that cord back to its rest a little more gently. You make a note to yourself to mention it later if it repeats. Repairmen can fix a lot, but they need you to tell them where to look. And you're the one who hears the line all day. Another pause opens, long enough that you close your lunch pail and set it away. You straighten the message pad, because there are still a few long-distance requests that were asked for later in the evening. Some callers don't want the charge until after a certain hour. Some want to wait until they know the person will be home. You keep these promises with pencil marks and a good sense of time. You check the wall clock, then your notes. One call is due now. You take the subscriber's number, plug into a trunk, and request the long-distance operator again. You pass the details, and you wait. This one takes longer to set, and you can hear faint switching tones in the distance, a soft mechanical searching. When the far operator returns, you ring your subscriber, connect them, and release. The trunk is held again, and you look at the remaining requests. Only one or two left. It's the kind of list you like to see at night, not empty. Because empty means you're simply waiting for the shift to end, but short enough that each promise feels manageable. A lamp rises, and the voice on the other end is uncertain. A man asks you to tell him if a certain number is in service. It's an awkward request because it brushes against privacy. But there's a standard answer that keeps everyone safe. You say you can try to place the call for him. If it rings, it rings. If it doesn't, you can tell him the result without interpreting it. He agrees, and you place the call. There's no answer and no busy signal, just ringing. You let it ring a reasonable length, then you return to him and say there's no answer. He thanks you, and he hangs up. You don't say more. You don't need to. The system's restraint is part of its trustworthiness. The room grows quieter again, and you can hear the faint hum of the power supply more than the callers now. The exchange equipment likes a steady temperature. In winter, the heating is kept conservative to keep contacts from shrinking and moisture from collecting. In summer, the building can feel close and the air has that warm dust smell of insulation and paper. Tonight, it's mild. The air feels stable, and the board feels stable too. A small part of you relaxes into that stability, but you don't let it make you careless. Late night is when small mistakes can happen, because the brain wants to drift. So you stay with the ritual. Every call is the same sequence. Hear the lamp, seat the plug, press the key, ask for the number, repeat it back, ring, announce, connect, release. The repetition isn't boring when you're inside it. It's steady. And steady is what a town needs from its invisible services. A trunk releases, and you mark the end time, and you glance at the toll log to make sure the ink is legible. You don't use ink, of course, you use pencil. But you still think of it as ink, because it has to endure. If a charge is disputed, it's your marks that get checked. Your marks have to be plain enough to outlast memory. A lamp rises again, and you answer. Number, please. This caller is older, and his words come slowly, like he's reading from a small card. He asks for long distance to a daughter in another state. He has the town, and he has the number, and he has a careful politeness that makes you slow down even more. You tell him there may be a wait, and he says, "That's fine. He's got time." You glance at the trunks. One is free. You decide to place it now because the board is quiet enough to give it your full attention. You plug into the trunk, request the long-distance operator, and pass the destination. You say the numbers with space between them, and you listen as she repeats them back. She does. Correct. Then she tells you it may take a little time to reach that far. You tell the man you'll hold the line. He says thank you, and you can hear him settle, perhaps into a chair. While that long distance is being built, you handle 2 local lamps that rise, one after another. A late call to the diner, a call to the police desk, routine, asking if a lost dog was found. You connect them, release, and return your attention to the held long-distance cord. The fire operator comes back, and you can hear that she's made progress. She has the distant line ringing. You ring your local subscriber, and when he answers, you announce and connect him through. You hear his voice soften when he realizes the call is going out. Then you release, and the trunk is occupied, but for a reason that feels gentle. The room is quiet enough now that you can hear your own breath under the headset. You adjust the band slightly, letting it rest where it doesn't press. You've worn this set long enough to know the exact spot that stays comfortable. A comfort like that is built slowly, one shift at a time. Another pause opens, and you start on your closing tasks, the ones you can do in pieces. You straighten the cords that have crept into small tangles. You make sure each pair is hanging in its proper place, so the next operator doesn't have to start their shift by untwisting someone else's work. You check the message pad for any notes that need to be handed over. You look at the trouble log, and you see the earlier notes about hum and clicking, and you add a final line. Condition eased in evening monitor. It's not poetry. It's just enough to tell tomorrow's shift what to listen for. A lamp rises, and you answer it, and the caller asks for the time. Time calls are common at night, especially from homes where the kitchen clock runs slow. You glance at the wall clock and tell them plainly the exact minute. They thank you and hang up. The lamp goes dark. It's a small reminder that in this town, you are also a kind of official voice. Not important, just reliable. The long-distance call with the older man is still holding a trunk. You can't hear it because you've released and you don't listen in. But you can see it, the steady occupied lamp. Sometimes long-distance calls at night last longer. People don't want to rush because they've paid for the minutes and saved the words all day. You let it be. A few minutes later, it releases, and the trunk lamp goes dark. You mark the end time with a small motion of the pencil. A neat log, a closed circle. The board is quieter now than it has been since dawn. Only occasional lamps rise, spaced far apart. In those spaces, you do more closing. You check the cord tips for grime and wipe them lightly. You look at the face of the board, at the labels, at the small scratches in the varnish. A cordboard is an object that shows use honestly. It doesn't hide it. The shine is dulled where hands rest. The labels are